Hello, everybody. Scott and Rachel here from Turnaround Marriage. And today we want to talk about when tragedy strikes. Will your marriage make it? And guys, we have the privilege and honor to speak with hundreds and hundreds of couples and to very often hear very tragic stories. And so what we've seen the pattern over and over again is that when tragedy or disaster strikes a marriage, it is extremely hard to be able to make it. So what we want to do today is talk about the reasons that happens and also what you can do about it. So if you're out there and tragedy has struck your family, God forbid you've experienced the loss of a child, you've found out some horrific news about your child being traumatized, or you've gone through some sort of a death, maybe a miscarriage, stillborn, or some other diagnosis, cancer, some serious tragedy in your family or in your marriage. This is for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to make sure that you are getting all of our information, seeing all of our videos. So if you're on Facebook, make sure that you find us. You just search Turnaround Marriage. You're going to find, first of all, our coaching page. Make sure you like that. And also you're going to find our private group, Turnaround Marriage, also called that. We've got about 1,700 people in there. And it's a great community of people that want to encourage each other. And we also give a lot of resourcing in there. Also, if you're on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe and share on there. We appreciate that very much. And yeah, we do want to talk about that because this is such a broad subject in terms of what people go through. It could be the momentary, like the sudden news that we get. It could also look like the long, slow traumatization of something that you've gone through. Perhaps it was like a special needs child, or the sickness that was prolonged that goes on and on. Or maybe it's even like dealing with the sickness of a parent. And that can be really difficult when your eyes get focused on those situations, and it's like it's all hands on deck, focused on what you need to do, and it gets confusing then.
Yeah. And even if you're out there and maybe you haven't had some horrific tragedy personally strike your family, but all of us have experienced the trauma of going through COVID, the pandemic, the lockdowns, the nonsense, the crazy, the isolation, the fear, the arguments and the polarization in families over vaccines and masks and all of that. Like, we've all lived through that trauma, and all of us can identify life before COVID and life after COVID, right? And just the same way we can do that with 9/11. We all remember, those of us who are old enough remember life before 9/11 and life after. And so, for everyone out there has been some tragedy, some trauma, some horrific event that we've all had to go through. And, it's how we handle it. But we wanted to talk about, some of the reasons why. But before we do that, we want to just say, if you're going through something horrific, you're hoping that the pain is going to go away. You're wondering, when are you going to stop crying yourself to sleep? You're wondering when the two of you can get on the same page about it. I know there's probably a deep, deep ache in your heart, and you're wondering, God, where are you? How could you let this happen? And if that's you, our hearts go out to you for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're so right, Rach. We do. And we have definitely walked journeys of things we never imagined that we would go through. Yeah. And, it is a commonly known fact that marriages struggle, and also that people have difficulty in this life, like really profound traumas. And the thing is, no one plans for it. No one thinks it's going to happen to them. But we know that obviously it does hit many, many people. And that's why a lot of people come to us. Yeah. And, the statistics do say that this is really, really bad. In fact, some of the most recent statistics say 80% of marriages end in divorce after the loss of a child. Just one case in point. And our experience also says this too, that it's really difficult when couples go through those trials. And we want to talk about the reasons here in a sec. But it's like, they've been so focused on the trial or the situation or the person that needs their attention or the situation that needs their attention that they don't know. They get so focused on that, they've lost priorities. They've lost a sense of nourishment for each other. And that's so, so important. Yeah. And so let's talk about some of those reasons. Number one that stands out to us is that, men and women are different, and they're different in general. This is very obviously, this is not what our culture says. Men and women are the same, and actually men and women don't exist, and gender is what you want to make it. It's not true. We're biological, male and female. That's the way God made us. And there are biological biological differences that include the way that we think. And so
Mhm.
when we get disconnected because of a situation, a lot of the reasons we are getting disconnected is because a man is coming at it this way, trying to fix it. A woman's coming at it this way, also trying to fix it, or to make it better. But she's really coming much more of that nurturing mindset, heart set. Man's coming like more like, I got to fix this situation. And they're coming at it very different, you know. And a lot of times when men get here, I will just add, they start clamming up when their fixes don't feel welcomed.
Mm.
And then they get clammed up, and the wife begins to think, well, my husband, he doesn't even care. I'm crying my heart out. He seems so disconnected here. And it's not because he's not emotionally connected. In fact, a lot of times when we get men on the phone, men and women, they'll open up and they'll get oftentimes very emotional as they're unpacking some of that. So that's one part of it. And then really number two that goes right in hand with that is that men and women actually grieve and process losses and process those difficulties in a different way. So they're dealing with the situation and dealing with each other differently, but also internally they're dealing with it differently.
Absolutely. It's so true. And yeah, it's very countercultural to say that men and women are different and have different strengths and weaknesses and do come at things from different point of view. And so when men are shutting down, the women can feel like their husbands don't care, or they, that they just don't have, they're heartless or whatever. And so often it's because the man, he doesn't have the words. He doesn't know how to express the feelings that he's had and the heartache and the devastation. And it just can create, these cracks, in the marriage that can now become crevices. And that's the third reason, is that, almost always in every marriage, there's a rub, right? There's those little things that kind of drive you nuts, those little things of two sinners living together where it's challenging. There's, going to be arguments, there's going to be disagreements. Now, how much that escalates depends on your skill set and your mindset and your emotional state. But with that being said, every marriage has its own challenges. And so every marriage has those little cracks, right? These little places where they probably need attention. And if we've been ignoring those for a long time, those cracks are now ripped wide open. And now we have these huge crevices. What was once a small thing escalated, and it's right here to the surface. And you can feel like, oh my gosh, you never listen. We start creating these stories and these accusations for the other person, and then further isolate yourself and then feel even more alone as you're going through what's maybe the most tragic thing you've ever faced. And so those cracks becoming crevices is a big reason, because there are those underlying things that are going on in every marriage that if you're not dealt with, they will be exposed. And that was certainly true in our marriage when stuff hit the fan. It was like those little things became huge things. Fourth reason that we've seen too is that the urgency of the situation, the urgency of the right now. It's like the 911. We've got to handle this right now. It basically has the ability to drain the marriage, because now we cannot nourish the marriage. We cannot really spend that quality time together. We can't really encourage one another the way we are, because we're so wrapped up in our own pain, so wrapped up in trying to process this loss, this tragedy, this disaster that's happened in the family. And it can feel like the marriage is on life support, because we've literally had to put some things on hold to try to handle this. And at the very time when the two of you should be coming together as a team, now we're further isolating ourselves, and it can make the tragedy even more tragic when we start to see the marriage erode as well.
It's so true. And the fifth reason that this really connects all these together is oftentimes things have progressively gotten worse. It wasn't like overnight that things got bad. And it's like the bringing to a boil, so to speak. It's like you didn't see it coming. At one time, you seemed like you're on the same page. And it's very interesting, because you'd think, especially when you're getting married and you're taking those vows, you're thinking, we're going to get through anything that comes our way. We're going to be strong. And when difficulties come, we're actually going to get stronger together. We're going to be able to navigate any problem that comes our way. You're not thinking there's going to be big things, but even if there are, you're going to get through it. But what happens is it's like, you're right. You're focused on the people or the situation, and you're not focused on the most important relationship apart from you and God. And that's right here. And things progressively get worse. And what happens, there's those crevices, and we start to blame each other because they're not showing up the way that you would hope or expect, and they're not giving to you what you need. And then that feels pretty yucky.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's the thing that we've seen with that. It's like when that blame starts happening, We do it because our brains are meaning-making machines. We are constantly trying to sort things out and figure out why things happen. Why tends to be the question most of us ask when these kinds of things happen, which, by the way, is a terrible question because we might never know the answer to it. But in the asking of why, often we will figure out, well, if you hadn't XYZ, then this wouldn't have happened. And if you hadn't ABC, this wouldn't have happened. And we can really start to blame and even further alienate your spouse in the marriage. And so, guys, there's so much that we can do, though. If you're finding yourself in that midst of the tragedy, there are so many things you can do. And we want to talk about that next.
Yeah. So let's talk about specifically what you can do. And the first thing we would say is go back to the beginning. Remember who you are. Remember who you married. You did not marry somebody that didn't want to do life with you. You didn't marry somebody who was not willing to go through difficult seasons with you. Remember that. Remember that vow that you took before God, first of all, then each other, then everybody else. And simply remembering that is such a foundational key point to build, to restore things and to build back trust and to build back connection, is going back to that connection between the two of you. And the second thing is really like it. It's going back to God again, going back to the beginning. Like you might have been grieving separately. And possibly if you've been grieving separately and going through the sadness and the struggle, and maybe even the depression, when you feel like a failure here and you feel like, all this yuck, or maybe you've brought in some stories like this, why has this happened to me? And you're facing that alone and you don't have your spouse at heart to connect with you about that. It's very likely you have pushed God away too. Very likely that you've not been connecting with him. And so connecting with each other, connecting with God, and really you could say connecting with God is even more important. Going back humbly together, bending your knee before the King, repenting before God, repenting before each other is such a key place to restore that connection. And then number 3, what we would recommend is you're going to need to do a different way of doing marriage. The way you've been doing things, and the fact that crevice could get widened, and the fact that you were not prioritizing things properly, it's not been working, and it's not going to get better simply by repenting, simply by saying, I'm sorry. Like that will not change the way you've done things. You might, maybe, it feels like it's going to be easier. And we talk to people all the time, and they'll essentially say, well, once my mother-in-law dies, or once my kids get out of the house or go off to college, then instantly everything they think is going to be healed. And it's just not the case. They're like pulling the wool over their eyes, believing something that's just likely not going to happen.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And so if you're in that case and now these cracks have become crevices, and now you're seeing, my gosh, there's a lot of things that we really need help. We need some help to be able to fix this. We want to encourage you to go ahead and book a call, because most likely you're going to need some outside help, someone from the outside looking in to be able to help you navigate this and help you become a team again. And so what we have to offer you is a complimentary breakthrough call. You can go to turnaroundmarriage.com/call, and you can book a time that will work for both of you, or just one of you, if one of you is willing to do what you can do to save the marriage. And we would be happy to give you 45 minutes to an hour of our time and our expertise to skillfully help you get to the bottom of what hasn't been working. We're going to listen to you. We're going to love you. We're going to pray with you, and we are going to help point you in the right direction. You may want our help, or if not, we can point you in another direction. But guys, if that is you, you deserve it. You deserve to have this phone call and to have a chance to be able to explore and unpack this stuff, and let it be that first step of healing for you. The first step of you guys becoming a team again and navigating this challenge, because we're here to tell you God is not going to waste the challenge, but it's what you do with it. It's what you make it to mean, and it's how you move forward toward healing. Are you going to grow bitter? Are you going to grow angry? Are you going to grow cold? Are you going to grow, furious with God over this? Are you going to let your marriage erode because of this? Or are you willing to say, we've got to do things differently, and some help with that? And if that's you, we want to encourage you to go ahead and book that call at turnaroundmarriage.com/call.
Yeah, that's so good. And we would welcome you to do that. And I would just stack on top of that, Rachel, so many people, when they're struggling and they're hurting, they think I can just keep managing, or this sucks. It doesn't feel right, but this is just what it's going to be. These are the cards that were dealt. And the lie is that you can just stay there, and it doesn't stay there. It will. And it either is going to continue to get worse, or something has to change.
Yeah.
And when it does change, trust me, it does not have to stay the way that it has been.
Right.
And when you get that healing, when things change, oh, how the emotions and feelings and the love and the passion and connection can come flooding back again.
Yeah.
But it's like, here you are, guys, you've heard this today and you're at a crossroads. You're going to continue to go down a path of more hurt and pain, separated from the one God gave you and probably separated from God, or there is another path of restoration and healing and wholeness for the rest of your life. We'd urge you to do that. Call at turnaroundmarriage.com/call.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if not, guys, most likely you're coping, you are drinking, you are eating, you are numbing, you are in pain, and there is a physical cost in your body. You might be having headaches and stomach aches. You might be having migraines and feeling chest pain. You might be feeling like you're getting so old rapidly because you're not sleeping and you've been crying every night. Guys, if that's you, we have a very unique approach of body, mind, heart, soul connection. And so you can explore that with us at turnaroundmarriage.com/call.